The 18th, after the eradication of the planet Chai, the Order believed that the Hex had been completely destroyed at last. The crystalline-based native Chine had proven less susceptible to the touch of the Hex, and their rigid structured minds had been more amenable to gnosis. Despite this, it had still become a necessity to carry out the 6th phase on the world and burn it to ensure the Hex was no more. For many years after the death of Chai, there was no sign of the Hex, and the feeling of hope began to emerge within the gleaming river of the ALLSHARD. Once again, then the dreams of a soft, primitive people, isolated within the sparse spiral arm of a galaxy, grew dark, and the unsophisticated inhabitants of the Earth were not advanced far beyond the ability to shape soft metals to their uses. There was a darkness shading the dreams of some and of the inhabitants of Thera, a small, protected peninsula jutting into a long, narrow, landlocked sea. Through more careful observation, the 2 phases of the crusade were implemented. A likely Hex infestation was identified on Thera, along with the most suitable force capable of confronting them: the people of the neighbouring island of Atlantia. The Crusade of Earth was well into the 3rd phase. The Atlantean Speaker, working swiftly against the tainted folk of the island city of Thera. The first apophic art was nearing completion on Atlantia, and construction of a bastion armature was begun in the heart of the island to support what the Order believed would be the final battle of their long war. Within a generation, the core Corelli would arrive to join their servants in preparation for a massive assault. The Order supposed with some confidence that their victory was at hand, but then Atlantia disappeared. An immediate campaign of gnosis was begun, but none of their followers appeared to have survived the utter eradication of the island. Even the subconscious of the tainted inhabitants of Thera was unavailable to the Order, as it appeared that the Hex enclave on Thera had been completely destroyed by a volcanic eruption. There was no sign that the Hex had survived the destruction of their island stronghold, but the Order was not quite ready to believe that victory had arrived from such an unexpected and unprecedented quarter. They were right to be suspicious. Factors of complication. In all the time the Order had kept watch across the galaxies for the taint of the Hex, they had spared no interest in unrelated goings-on in a myriad of life forms flourishing across 1,000 other worlds. So single-minded were the Order in their crusade that entire civilizations were born, evolved, and died without the all-powerful Order even learning their name. Certainly, the Order had no concept that, in more recent moments of the material realm, say a mere few thousand years or so, but a close-knit federation of worlds had been formed, an organization of sentient races unlike anything this galaxy had ever seen before, the Watchers. It took decades of analysis and penetrative gnosis of the galaxy before the Order finally understood what had happened at Atlantia. At first, it was feared the Watchers were tools of the Hex's Dark Council, having clearly brought about the destruction of Atlantia, but it was revealed that in this case, appearances were deceptive. These Watchers were nothing more than younger races, who had wandered unknowingly into the internal war between the Ancients. These galactic children would normally be of little consequence to the Order, but here on Earth, they were a dangerous obstacle to the Crusade. Renewal. Keeping a wary eye out for any future visits from the Watchers, the ALLSHARD maintained a vigil for many centuries over the developing nation-states of Earth. Eventually, after more than 2,000 years, signs began to emerge once more of the Hex taint. The corruption was predictably more widespread in its resurgence. As it was evident that the Hex was active once more, the Order were forced to restart the Crusade at the 1st phase. This time, a secretive religious sect known as the Holy Path of Men proved most predisposed towards the ALLSHARD's approach. Located in the densely populated continent of Europe, the newly dubbed Holy Order of Man began to extend its power and influence throughout the region. Confident with how they could impart their technological gnosis to the humans of this cult, the ALLSHARD moved at their expedient pace, and within 2,000 years had progressed the Holy Crusade to the 3rd phase, and with the Holy Order of Man at its heart. Since the resumption of the Crusade of Earth at an accelerated pace, the Holy Order of Man has developed quickly into a well-disciplined secret army, now known simply as the Order. We are a fanatical force who mask our true beliefs beneath the cover of a fringe religion, in the way carefully ensuring its established concepts of godhood and the doctrines of the other orthodoxies. We can move amongst the spreading colonial powers to fund enclaves across the globe. From these multiple strongholds, we are to strike out against hex activity and agitate local populations against the pawns of a dark council. Chapel fortresses have been built in remote areas as precursors to bastion armatures. Finally, in my lifetime, the apothic archers have been assembled. The Cor Corali finally walk the earth amongst the faithful. Glorious sight to behold indeed. Allies amongst the herd. Yet, for all the recent successes, there have been setbacks as well. Our situation has become infinitely more complex since the appearance of other advanced technologies. These have suddenly begun to appear across the continent as if they're purposely spread to confuse and confound our task. Perhaps these are of the Watchers, or even might be remnant order, equipment lost with the destruction of Atlantia. Whatever their source, they were to be expunged from the earth with the same zeal and fervour as though they were infernal exploited weapons. It is fortunate that in hunting down and destroying enemies of our orthodoxy, we have found allies. After bandits using hex-tainted weaponry were found to be raiding the city of Erdene on the border with Greece, I dispatched Sir Dylan Callas and his Spurca Lapatus to cleanse them from the region. During this action, Callas saved the son of an Ottoman noble. Within the year, the order had found sympathetic supporters within the Sultanate. Sultan Sulaiman Mustafa first has had his eyes opened to the truth of the order of the ALLSHARD. Once he was given a version of the true nature of the order that he could comprehend, he spent a full day in council with his Grand Vizier, Mohammed Pasha. Calling Callas to his court, he proclaimed that the order of the ALLSHARD would thereafter permitted religion in the Ottoman Sultanate, and that he would consider whatever our requirements would be to establish a stronghold in the Sultanate. His conditions were simple. Firstly, that his royal personage would be guarded by a phalanx of Cor Corali at all times, as he moved about his realm. Furthermore, the Sultanate required the order to deploy their forces along his own in the dispute of mutually beneficial military objectives. These 2 points were readily accepted, and detachments of Speka are now routinely deployed along Sultanate forces. The order made manifest. The pinnacle of the relationship with our new Ottoman allies was the completion of a second bastion armature. Though construction of the first had begun in the Rocky Mountains many years previously, work had been slow, as it was carried out in secret and with limited resources. No such skill or restraint was required in the Ottoman Sultanate. And now mighty armature has been finally completed. This colossal fortress, known as the Isaac de Cast, and lies amongst the rugged vistas of Persia. The bastion armature located in the Rocky Mountains was finally completed in 1870. And we have titled it the High City. Alongside Azadakast, they have become a focal point for most of the Crusades activity. As the regional politics developed, both in the Sultanate, but more particularly here in the Union, we have been disturbed to find more and more signs of a hex taint emerging. The chaotic, rough and tumbled nature of the western borderlands is proving to be a perfect environment for the hex. The entity is driven to take advantage of the plight and over-disposed and outcast of the feathered expansion of this young nation. To combat this rising corruption, my servants, under the guidance and with the advice of our Cor Corali, direct the Spica in their training and preparation. As stockpiles of advanced weapons build beneath the bastion armatures for coming war, I pray I have the strength to temper the will of my masters in the ALLSHARD. For if the order cannot destroy the hex here in the American West or elsewhere in the world, the burning of the earth must follow. The zealot at my heels. My calls for temperance are heeded by many, as it is the right of the High Sakaran, but I am aware there is a growing following beholding around the upstart Elita Nura. Within our number, she was only recently raised to the rank of Sakaran, following years of service in the field as a Mimreg. During the third phase, Nura's selection was initially something of a disappointment to her. With the construction of Apopheusis Gates, she yearned for a chance to join the Cor Corali. Unlike the many of her rank within the order, Nura was thoroughly aware of what Apopheusis to Cor Corali entails. but this knowledge did not dampen her zeal. Her fervent desire to serve the order was thus recognized by the ALLSHARD, and so Nura was given command of the Portal Vanguard, the Spear of Astria. Nura believes that the last battle against the Hex fast approaches, so she pushes for phase 5 of the Crusade to be enacted, and such as Nura's voice is the most extreme within the orders, as she seeks to provoke a suitably devastating encounter with the Hex that would justify the declaration of phase 5 and all-out war. Within the council, she is considered a fractious zealot, and I know she is marked to succeed me as I succumb. Should I succumb to an assassin approaching old age or an accident, when in the field acting as the ALLSHARD's instrument, she is equally impatient to bring about the unveiling of the Order's true mission. This reveals itself as a disdain for the use of subterfuge and stealth, instead of portal jumping into combat directly and taking her foe unawares, with precision application of overwhelming force against the tainted by the Hex, though absorption of its essence or simply through being manipulated by the Dark Council. She finds that the seismic powers of her luminant stealth more capable for eliminating either type of foe. For now, her violent excesses and insistent urgings for progression of the crusade have been forestalled by my patient testimony, and sermonizing, but as open war looms ever closer, it is only a matter of time she gains enough support on the council to convince the ALLSHARD to begin the next phase of the crusade. Nura's commitment to the order is absolute, and her greatest fear is that her faith in its mission should be found wanting in its most desperate hour, a fear whose voice she drowns out with strident calls for war. Should she learn of my true reasons for wanting to stall furtherance of the crusade, she would decry me to the ALLSHARD and perform the permanent excommunication by severing my head from my shoulders. I pray I have the strength to see through my plan before I am discovered.